So let's talk about Harry Potter Book 4. Harry is 14, apparently the age at which wizards are finally able to acknowledge their crushes for the first time. Now, part of the reason that romantic attraction plays a role for the first time in this book is because a subplot involves the Daily Prophet printing a story that ships Harry and Hermione. This is the result of creating in the minds of the wizarding world a so-called love triangle between Harry, Hermione, and Victor Crumb. Now, the book does call it a love triangle, and I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It's only a love triangle if Harry likes Crumb or vice versa. This is just a love angle. Don't get me wrong, it's a cute angle, but it's not a triangle. Although I will say that in a situation where a bunch of people like the same person, you might be able to call that a love hashtag, like, say, all of Crumb's fangirls in the library. So anyway, the various crushes that become more acknowledged in this book is an interesting way in which we see the characters starting to grow up. And one of the reasons why I think it would have been really cool if I was allowed to read these books when I was growing up, because I assume it gives you the feeling that you are growing up with these characters. That said, as this timeline demonstrates, Harry was getting 1 year older each year because the first 4 books came out once a year, but after that, as the books became longer, there was a larger gap in between books, and in that sense, from a reader perspective, Harry's character started aging slower over time. So that means that if you happen to be 11 when the first book came out in 1997, you would age at the same rate as Harry, but after a time, you started to age a lot faster than him. It also means that it was possible for a reader to overtake Harry in age. For example, my fiancée Ashley was 10 years old when the first book came out, which means she was a year younger than Harry for the first 4 years, but in between the 4th and 5th book, she overcame him in age, and by the time the series finished, she beat him by 4 years if aging was a competition. Now, as it turns out, many smart people on the internet, such as the creator of hplexicon.org, have used prophecies and really old characters like the ghosts in the book to create timelines for Harry Potter universe and for Harry Potter's life. And Harry Potter, as it turns out, was born in 1980, which means that if he were a real person, the year that the book came out, 1997, he was already 17 years old. So a comparison of Harry's character age to his real age, if he were living, would look something like this. Speaking of which, that explains the really odd lack of technology in the book, specifically the reason that whenever wizards have problems, they don't solve them the way that you or I would, which is to say pulling out your smartphone and Googling a how-to video on YouTube. Yes, I realize that technology doesn't work at Hogwarts, but I mean, even in the Muggle world of London, we don't see any Muggles using this kind of technology, because it turns out if you look at Harry's age, the books are set in the years 1991 to 1998. By comparison, Google wasn't invented until 1996 and YouTube until 2005. Happy 10th birthday, YouTube! Depending on how strict your parents are, you might finally be allowed to read Harry Potter. Anyway, if you're trying to remember which book Book 4 is, it's the one where Harry competes in the Wizarding Hunger Games. Although unlike Katniss, he does not volunteer to save his sister, he gets volunteered and ends up saving someone else's sister. Hey look, there's another amputee professor in this book, Professor Moody, although the book says that his wooden prosthesis ends with a clawed foot, which must leave some really crazy footprints if he ever conducts heists. Book 4 seemed to be edited a lot differently than the first 3. I say this because A, there were many more words per chapter that I didn't know that seemed to be UK-isms, such as the words lie in for sleep in, pen friend for pen pal, and B, it's the first book of the series where the characters frequently end their sentences with a rhetorical question asking for confirmation and using a pronoun. Like, the characters didn't do that in the first 3 books, did they? And that's exactly how I'm ending my sentences right now, aren't I? You're probably also aware that the UK version of the first book was called The Philosopher's Stone, but in the American version they changed it to The Sorcerer's Stone, causing conservative parents across America to ban the books from their household because sorcerer sounds very dark and evil. So I guess philosopher means something very different in the UK, but if my parents were trying to protect us from sorcery, it turns out kind of funny because my brother Matt majored in philosophy in college, becoming, I guess, a philosopher, and by UK standards, a sorcerer?
AMPUTEE